Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to another instructional video on how to write a better World History AP essay. This is the DBQ. We're going to take a look at the DBQ today and figure out what we can do better. I'm going to go kind of fast, so if you need to use your pause button, make sure to do that. The DBQ is your document-based question. It usually takes you the longest time to answer this question, but it's the most fun because it's like putting together pieces of a puzzle. So let's start with the rubric. The rubric here is similar to the other essays, but also very different because it has to do with the document. So if you have to write a thesis statement, you have to address all the documents, and you have to understand all the documents. You can misinterpret one if you need to. You need to use all these documents for evidence. You can get different levels of points if you use all but one and if you use all but two. But the best bet is to use evidence from all the documents to give yourself the best shot. You need to group the documents in 2 or 3 ways. The official AP rubric says you need to group the documents in 2 or 3 ways. So my best advice is to group in at least 3 ways to make sure that you hit that minimum. You need to analyze the point of view in 2 or more documents. 2 is the minimum here, so you'd always want to try for more. And then you need to identify and explain the need for one other source, one other document or source, which is like a missing perspective from this question. So it's a lot of things. It's 6 things to remember, and they're worth different points. The thesis is worth 1 point. Understanding and addressing all the documents is worth 1 point. Either get it or you don't. You need to use all the evidence from the documents. You can either get 2 if you use them all or all but 1, or you can get 1 point if you do all but 2. And you need to be able to group the documents. If you can get that, you get the point. Analyzing the point of view in the documents, 2 plus documents is worth 1 point. And then explaining an additional source which might be needed to help you answer the question is worth 1 point. Now let's take a look at what I consider the most important first 3 steps. If you follow these first 3 steps, you can set yourself up for a really good document-based question. So each document-based question has a prompt. The first thing you want to do is dissect the prompt. And by that, I mean take a look at it, make sure you understand what the prompt is asking you to do. Know the prompt in your mind, be able to say what it is so that way you can go back to it and use it. After that, you want to create your groups. You read the documents and you group your documents immediately. As quickly as you can, create groups. You should be thinking about how am I going to group these documents right away. And then based on your groups, you formulate a thesis statement. So you look at the prompt, you group the documents, you make a thesis statement. And then you're ready, you're pretty much good to go. The rest of the essay writes itself. I'm just kidding, you still have to write it. So let's take a look at dissecting the prompt. Each prompt is written differently from the changing continuity essay or the comparison essay. This can be written essentially asking you to find some common theme among these documents and relating them to an issue. So I know I'm being very vague here, but each one of these prompts is very, very different. We'll look at some sample prompts later on in this video, so just keep that in mind. I'll show you how to dissect the prompt. Read it carefully and underline the key words. Be able to restate the prompt in your own words because that's an important skill that you're going to have to be able to do, and it'll help you when it comes time to grouping. Think about how you might answer this question if you didn't have documents. So if you had to guess at what the answer to this question would be, this kind of gives you a baseline knowledge for what you know already about this topic. And then think about, are there any natural groups that you can already see occurring that documents might fit into? So this gives you kind of a head start on grouping. So once you know the prompt and it's in the back of your mind, you're going to be good to go and start reading the documents. So next, you're going to read the documents with grouping them in mind. And as you read the documents, you want to pay attention to the basic meaning of the documents. One of the most important things you can do is read who is writing the document first. And then as you read, keep in mind what is the prompt asking you to do, and underline parts of the document that relate right back to the prompt. So this will help you when it comes time to grouping. Summarize the basic meaning in your head. You don't have to write down the summary because that's just a lot of time taken writing things down. But do write a couple of words next to the document that'll help you as you're going back and scanning all of your documents to recognize which one of these documents is the one that you're thinking of. Remember, you're going to have between 6 and 10 documents. And so being able to keep these all straight in your head is kind of a difficult thing to do. And if you write a couple of words that help you remember what these documents are about, it'll help you when it comes time to grouping. Then make sure that you also pay attention to who the author is and where this source is coming from, and write a little quick POV to remember to go back and look at the point of view of those authors later. Remember, you have to do that in 2 documents, so you should be identifying that right away. I'll talk a little bit more about that on a few slides from now. Finally, you create your groups. Try to fit all the documents within a group. If you have a couple of documents that are stragglers, that's okay, but just be able to create groups that fit most of these documents in. Remember, groups are 2 or more documents, and you can put documents in more than one group. So you can talk about, say document 1 seems like it would fit into 2 different ones. Do it in 2 different groups. That's perfectly fine. But these documents are kind of designed in a way that they should fit. So this is where it becomes like you're the puzzle master and you're trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle into the correct groups. There is no one way to group documents. You can do it in a lot of different ways. So we'll talk about what possible groupings might look like later on. But you want to group your documents first. So group them according to some sort of common trait or common trend that occurs within the documents of the same group. Next, based on your groups, think about how these groups are going to help you answer the prompt. So you grouped them based on what you knew about the prompt. Then you want to essentially characterize each group and be able to give each group kind of a label or a name. So you might want to label each group based on one common characteristic, kind of use that characteristic to help you write a thesis statement and include it. So if you have 3 groups, answer the prompt by not simply restating the prompt, but by using your groups to help you. So for instance, if the prompt asks you what is the relationship between something and something else, you might want to say, well, there are 3 different types of relationships. This group, the second group, and the third group, and combine those into a effective thesis. I'll give you an example of this later on, but your groups basically will help you write your thesis for you. Write a general introduction and then write your thesis statement. The introduction just introduces the topic, and then your thesis statement answers the prompt. It doesn't just restate the prompt, it answers the prompt. So this will help you organize the rest of your essay, because a good thesis statement will have the groups already in there, and then when you write your body paragraphs, they are your groups. So let's move on to the body of the essay. The body paragraphs are your groups. So each group that you created should be a body paragraph, and your topic sentence is going to be essentially the characterization that you, or the name that you gave to that group. So you give a topic sentence which describes all the documents in that group and how they are related, and you also, it's really important to do this, you also want to list the documents that will be included in that group. So if documents 1, 5, and 7 all had the same characteristic, you would say these 3 documents, 1, 5, and 7, all had a similar characteristic in that they, and say whatever it is. That becomes your topic sentence. Then you are going to address the documents individually. Remember, in order to show understanding, you can group them, but in order to show evidence, you have to treat each document individually, and the same goes for point of view. So you should be spending a couple of sentences on each document. Summarize the document first. Show that you understand the document. So you would start your sentence with document 1 is, and you would say a photograph of whatever, a newspaper article, a chart which is this, blah, blah, blah. You summarize the document. This is your basic understanding. Then you spend a sentence or 2 talking about how this document supports your thesis statement or supports at least the topic sentence in this paragraph. So you want to use lots of commentary here. Do not make the mistake of quoting documents word for word. Essay readers know these documents word for word, and so they are going to know when you're just quoting them. And just quoting a document does not show that you understand the document. In fact, if I were you, I would not quote anything more than 1 or 2 words from a document, because it doesn't show that you understand it. It just shows that you know how to rewrite the document in your essay. So don't do it. It's a waste of time. Use commentary. This is where your English skills will come into play. You need to be able to look at it and then provide a lot of commentary about how it helps you prove your point. At the end of talking about each document, or within it, you might want to talk about the author and a possible point of view. You're not going to be able to do this for every single document, but if you feel like you can characterize who this author is and why they might say what they say, use lots of commentary to talk about the author. So those 3 bullets, summarizing, explaining, and analyzing the point of view of the author, is what you should do for just about every single document. Maybe not point of view for every single one, but at least, at the very least, the summarizing and explaining each document. Then at the end of your paragraph, I would attempt to try to throw in an additional document or source which might help you better explain some insight into the topic. Again, you only need to be able to do this 1 time in your essay, but if you attempt it 2 or 3 times, it can't hurt you. It can only help you. So if you attempt to do it and the reader doesn't think that it was a good enough attempt, maybe your second attempt will be good and then you will get that point. So all you have to do is get the point once, and they can never take that point away from you. So it's the beautiful part about this essay. All right. This process is essentially the same for every single body paragraph that you have. So each group becomes a body paragraph. Therefore, my advice is a minimum of 4 paragraphs in this essay, and these paragraphs can tend to be pretty long paragraphs. So just keep in mind that they give you they allot about 50 minutes for the essay, because it's a lot of time spent on these body paragraphs and analyzing these documents. So how do we analyze point of view? This is a difficult point to get, because a lot of students have a difficult time actually analyzing the point of view. A lot of students are really good at identifying the point of view. Identifying a point of view is saying who is speaking. Analyzing is explaining why they are speaking, what the tone of their document is, why this source might be considered biased, and that kind of thing. You need to do this for at least 2 documents, so my best advice is to try it with at least 4 documents. That way, if you miss a couple of them, you still have 2 backups. And remember, all you need to do is get 2, and they can never take that point away from you. So more is better. Don't attempt in all unless you feel you have all this time, because if you attempt to analyze point of view in every single document, you're going to realize really quickly that this eats up a lot of your time, especially if it's something that you might not be able to analyze the point of view. If it's a chart, for instance, it's kind of difficult to analyze the point of view of a chart, because the chart usually represents factual data, and unless you know that it's like purposefully skewed data, then a chart is kind of worthless to try to attempt point of view. But newspaper articles, pictures, headlines, that kind of stuff, they can analyze point of view. I would attempt it at least 1 or 2 documents per paragraph. That gives you a good chance of getting that point. And think soapstone. If your AP teacher teaches you this soapstone, that's cool. I usually teach this to my students. Think about who the speaker is. Think about what the occasion is. Think about who the intended audience is. Think about the purpose of this document, and then think about the subject. What is it that they are talking about? A lot of times this really can make the difference. If you talk about what each one of these things are and why it's significant, like for instance, if the occasion is some big celebration, and you might be able to talk about then the overall tone of the document, the last part here being one of happiness and exuberance, and so the celebratory tone. You have to explain each one of these. You can't just identify. So it's identify and explain. That's what analysis is. You have to go beyond just saying the author is the queen, or the author is the president, or the author is a peasant, and you have to then explain why that's significant. You also cannot just say, well, this source is biased, because that will not get you anywhere. You have to explain why this source is biased if you want to get the point. Hopefully that makes sense. So analyzing point of view is a little more extensive than just saying this is who said it. It's saying why they said it, how they said it, what the tone was, what the purpose of this document might be, how it might be misinterpreted by other people, that kind of thing. So attempt it more than twice. The last part, the additional source, is one of the trickiest points because they give you a lot of sources already, and you have to be able to identify one more source which might change, alter, or add to your argument that you're making, your thesis statement. So you don't want to make it too general. You don't want to say, I could use a newspaper article, because that doesn't really tell me anything. And you don't want to be too specific, like saying, I would want a newspaper article written by a young female who is a peasant, because that is a little bit nitpicky, and it doesn't necessarily lend itself to explain why you would need that source. A lot of times it's just identifying a missing perspective. So who is not represented here? A missing voice, what kind of person or who is excluded from this, and what do you not see? Is there something that's glaringly missing that you expected to see? This might be something too. And again, you have to kind of identify what it is that you feel like is missing, or an opinion, somebody else's opinion, who you feel, or you might even know. You don't have to say a specific person. You don't have to say a specific picture or a specific chart, but something that you feel is missing from this, and you have to then explain why you feel it's missing. You cannot just ask for a similar document. So if you say document 4 was really helpful, I could use a document that was just like document 4. You already have document 4. You don't need another document 4. If there was only one perspective from a woman, it seems that most students want to write, well, there was only one woman, so I'd like to hear from another woman. Explain why that would be important, and you can get that. But if you just say, well, because there was only one, that doesn't tell me anything. Or someone who is poor, like that's the other one. If I could just hear the perspective of a peasant during this time period, this would fill out my argument. Well, you have to explain why. Why would a peasant's opinion? What do you think the peasant might say? So it's a little more. It's beyond just saying, I think I'd like to hear from somebody. You have to explain why. That's how you get your additional source. Again, try this more than once, because if you just get one, you're good. And if you miss a couple of them but get one, you get the point. It doesn't matter that you screwed up on the other two. So also make sure it relates to the prompt. You don't just want to ask for something that has no relationship to the prompt at all. So some sample DBQ prompts that have actually been used by the College Board in the past. We're going to take a look at these and then kind of dissect these prompts. Analyze Han and Roman attitudes toward technology. So this was documents about Han China and the Roman Empire and their attitudes about technology. Analyze African actions and reactions to the European scramble for Africa. You might know something about the scramble for Africa, but you might not be able to necessarily tell me what the actions and reactions might be. Another one, this one was very popular, analyze the relationship between cricket, the game cricket, and politics in South Asia, and there was a time period in there as well. So what are the key points of this, and how might you dissect these prompts? First of all, look for the key words that will help you in grouping. In the first one, the key word is attitudes. Attitudes towards technology. So were they positive towards technology? Were they hesitant to adopt technology? Did they like the technology? Did they hate the technology? What kind of things are we talking about here? The attitudes is the big important word here. African actions and reactions. That's how you would group these ones. What were their actions and reactions? How can you characterize their actions or reactions? And why would that be important? That's how you would create your groups. And then in the one about cricket and politics, you have to be able to describe the different relationships between cricket and politics. So the relationship is the key word here. Was it a positive relationship? Was it a unifying factor? Did it disintegrate? Did it cause turmoil? What kind of thing what was this relationship between cricket and politics?